So now we're going to look at some examples of some DNA fingerprints and some different situations that might happen that these DNA fingerprints would be useful in. Okay, so the first up, we have DNA left at a crime scene, murder scene in this case. So the felon was actually scratched by his victim, so some of his skin cells were found under the victim's fingernails. There was enough evidence to perform PCR and also do a gel electrophoresis from it. And given that they had a couple suspects, they got DNA from each suspect and then went to compare it to the DNA found at the crime scene. So if you'll notice here, okay, we have the felon's DNA. So we are looking for an exact match, okay, with all of these different bands. So if you look across, Suspect 1 might have that top band, Suspect 2 does, but 3 does not. So we can go ahead and cut out 3. And then go on to the second band, Suspect 1 does not have it, so we can cut out Suspect 1, but Suspect 2 does. And we continue checking all the way down, and you see that Suspect 2 is the felon, in this case, the murderer. Alright, so this is looking at a paternity test. So Mrs. Smith had a baby that she named Tyra. So baby, Tyra, and mom. So she believes that one of two men can be the father of her child. So she does a paternity test in order to determine which man is the baby's father. So in this case, we know that the baby's DNA comes from both the mom and the dad. Okay, so all of the baby's bands here have to come from either mom or dad. Okay, so if we look, this top band, okay, matches with one from the mom. So we move on to the second. Well, this second band, okay, could match with dad 1 or dad 2. A little fuzzy on that. Okay, then we look at the third band. Well, it matches with mom, so it didn't have to come from dad. Then we look down here at this band. It's not from mom, so it has to be from dad. But again, those are relatively close. So we keep looking. We get down to this band. Well, mom doesn't have a matching one, and as we go across, dad 1 does not have a matching one either, but dad 2 does. Okay, and as you continue to check down, there is another one right here where you can see that these two bands line up. So, dad 2 is actually the father of this baby. So this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. Okay, so Mr. and Mrs. Jones just gave birth to fraternal twins. So these are not identical twins. Okay, so they don't have the same DNA. Unfortunately, apparently they should have picked a different hospital because the nurse has confused the Jones twins with 4 other babies. So, of course, they decide to do a DNA test to determine which kids are Mr. and Mrs. Jones' new kids. Okay, so start looking across here. Well, we notice that dad has a very distinctive 3-band pattern here. There's also child 1 has that same pattern. So let's go ahead and check through child 1. Okay, we've got another band here that matches with mom. Band here that matches with mom as well. This one matches with dad. Again with mom. And then again with mom here. So child 1 is obviously one of their children. Okay, that's a relatively easy one here. So we'll go ahead and highlight child 1. Alright, so now moving on. Okay, so we can already go ahead and rule out child 2 because if you notice this is a very high band. Mom and dad don't have a band there. Same thing with child 3. Okay, so we've already ruled out these two. And then we go up to child 4. Okay, so we look here. Alright, we've got bands that match across. Same as here. And when you actually are looking at these, it's actually a good idea to kind of draw across them. It sometimes will help you determine where the bands are in relation to each other, especially as you move further and further apart. Okay, So we've got a band here that could match with Dad, one here with Mom, and then this one is a little bit suspect, so this isn't looking too promising. Okay, and as we continue down, it's not the greatest match. And then this one right here is really low. Okay, this is a very low band, which neither Mom nor Dad have. So child 4 is now out. Okay, so now it's between child 5 and 6. So we look, well, this band could come from Dad. This one could come from Mom or Dad. Okay, so we're undetermined there as of yet. This one, those could have come from Dad. But then we continue to look down, and we get to this band on child 6, which doesn't look like it has anything that matches up with Mom and Dad. So continue scanning through it, and you see this band here. Again, this one is way too low for Mom or Dad. Okay, so then just go back and double check everything in child 5. And this looks like a very distinctive 3-band pattern, but it actually comes the top 2 from Mom and the bottom one from Dad. Same here. Top one from Dad, bottom one from Mom. So child 5 is the second kid. So now we've reunited parents and everything is wonderful. All right, so getting nice and creative with the names here. The millionaire, Mr. Big, has just died. He has left behind a wife, a daughter, and a large inheritance. The news of his death has brought forth 2 men who claim to be the long-lost son of Mr. and Mrs. Big. Before Mr. and Mrs. Big were married, they had an illegitimate child and placed him up for adoption. So the question is, are either of these men telling the truth? And if so, which one? Okay, this is where things get more confusing, because for whatever reason, they didn't go back and get Mr. Big's DNA. They just stuck with Mrs. Big and the daughter. Okay, so the son and the daughter are going to be closest on their own to the mother. Okay, they will be further apart from each other. Okay, so with this one, it doesn't have to line up perfectly because we don't have the DNA of the dad. If we had the DNA of the dad, compare the mom's DNA, the dad's DNA, and the potential son's DNA. Okay, so if there is a band in the son that is not found in the mom or the daughter, okay, or is not found in the mom, if it's found in the daughter, that is a better case for saying that they are related, but it won't have to be found in the daughter. Okay? I know it's a little bit weird, but alright. So we look here, mom and daughter both have this distinctive 3-band pattern. Son has the middle one, or son 1 has the middle. Okay? Son 2, his first band, mom, daughter don't have it. So that's, I mean, it's not completely ruling him out, but it's not looking so good for son 2 already. Then we look here. We've got son 1 lines up with mom. Son 2 doesn't line up with either. So again, not looking all that good for son 2. Daughter has a band here that the mom doesn't have. So this band is from the dad. Okay, but you'll notice son 1 and son 2 have a similar band. So son 1 is still pretty well in the running. Okay, and we go down here, right? Son 1 matches with the mom here, matches with both mom and daughter on this one. Son 2 is still kind of sticking out there without a bunch of matches. And then he's got this very distinctive pattern, which nobody else has. Okay, and you continue looking down son 1, and he's still hitting more and more matches, while son 2 is still missing more and more. So at that point, you can conclude that son 1 is actually the long-lost son of Mr. and Mrs. Big. Okay, simply by looking at his sister and his mom and their DNA fingerprints. Okay, so DNA fingerprinting can be used in several different ways. We've talked about the evidence in criminal cases. In that case, you need to have a perfect match or as close as possible to a perfect match, and also prove that through statistics that only one person on Earth statistically has that combination of repeats at those different locations. It can also be used in paternity tests, which is what we saw with Mrs. Smith and her baby girl Tyra, finding out which one was the father. It can be used in immigration requests for different legal purposes, and then also studying biodiversity, okay? So that's what they're looking at here. And also tracking genetically modified crops, okay? So that is it for this section.